1/5 of last year's national championship game starters just announced their return to college basketball. The question now, will either of them be playing again on the final Monday of the season?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Wednesday. Happy NBA draft withdrawal deadline day. We're happy to be with you here on Locked On College Basketball, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shader, joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us one of your first listens or watches of the day. We want to remind you, you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us, and of course, our great Locked On College Basketball Discord community. Joining me today is our good buddy Leaf Tulane. It's a Wednesday, and that means we're here together. It's a great time of the year for Leaf because it's both college basketball content and it's NBA draft content, and that just is like a crossroads of all the best stuff that Leaf does. Speaking of which, coming up on the show today, tonight is the draft withdrawal deadline. That'll be 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. On tomorrow's show, Thursday, Andy is going to handle any of the last-minute declarations we get to, including Texas A&M's news with Pop Isaacs and Mackenzie Mbako. We're not going to hit that today on the show. Just want to let you know that. But where Leaf and I are going today, we're going to talk about two players who were in the national championship game last year, both announcing yesterday that they're returning to school. Plus, Michigan gets their big news with Yaxel Lendeborg coming out. Despite some first-round draft buzz, I want to ask Leaf where he had Lendeborg and if he was surprised by this. Plus, we learned of another couple headlining matchups ahead of this season, including flight plane game round 2. So, Leaf, here's where we got to start. We had a couple names from both Florida and Houston who were in the NBA draft process that I think we expected would ultimately decide to come back to school in Milos Uzan for Houston and Alex Condon for Florida. But as we always say, until they actually announce it, who knows what's going to happen? And yesterday, both guys made it official. So my question to you, of these national championship combatants who are coming back to school, which one is a bigger deal for his school?
That's tough because both are obviously in good situations and they have talent there already. So in Florida's case, they already had Ruben Chinyelu and my boy Thomas Houck back. So you would say, oh, well, it doesn't matter as much. They also had Handlocks and they had, it's luxury for each team. In the case of Houston, I would say it's bigger. Not because it's a slight to Condon, but Uzan was what changed for them during the season. They started the season 4-3 last year. And it was while he was acclimating to Houston's system and building confidence, was recovering from a broken nose, so he didn't practice as much. And when he took the leap, they were practically unbeatable. Like they just didn't lose for about the span of 3 months. Of course, they lost a couple times, but very, very infrequently. And his presence as someone who could step up and score to complement the scoring prowess of some of the mainstays that were already there. And then, of course, their rugged defense. I think he takes a step forward as a potential All-American. You look at some of the guys who've done this for Houston years past. Marcus Sasser had a chance to leave, came back, and was an All-American. Jamal Shed did so, was an All-American. So I think there's a real pathway for Uzan to replicate that. And so that's why I think it's a bigger addition by just staying the same. And, I don't want to go too deep into the Pop Isaacs things, but I never liked that fit. I never liked that whatsoever. Agreed. It made no sense. He's a 2-guard. Why would he be there? And so if Uzan came back, I was very curious to see what would happen with him. So that did not surprise me. And I actually think that was a huge plus to get Uzan back anyway, but also kind of be out of the hairs of, now we have this guy taking a ton of shots, and it just didn't feel the Houston way. As for Florida, Condon was great. I argued that if they did the 8-man first team, like they often did last year, I argued in January when I'll toot my own horn here, but when I started saying that Florida was going to win the national championship, I started saying that, and I said, well, because their front court's just as good as their backcourt, and their backcourt had the second best player in the country, which is Walter Clayton Jr.
Yeah.
And, you look at that, But the reason for that was their most consistent big at that point was Condon. Therefore, if you follow my logic and say that's the best team, then you probably should have a representative from the front court too. And Condon would have been the most likely guy. So this is a guy that I thought earned all SEC recognition, but it's just a point guard versus that's exactly what they needed. Whereas Florida had ways to circumlocute and get around not having Alex Condon.
I tell you, Leaf, when the season ended, did you think there was any world in which the Gators would have back all four of that front court rotation, whether by draft decision or portal decision? Because I'll cards on the table. I thought, in this day and age, when you got four guys all vying for that playing time at this basically the same two positions, it feels like even if nobody goes to the draft, surely one of them will leave in the portal despite winning the national championship. Could you imagine a scenario that we're in where all four of them are going to stay?
I do think it's a little easier in the case that Thomas Houck came back first. If others had come back first, I think there would be a little bit more skepticism for me, because when their best prospect, in my opinion, came back, it laid out the foundation of, okay, we can really contend for this.
Yeah.
And it also laid out the foundation that, look, you lost three guards, but one of them had to play the small forward.
Right.
And that's Will Richards. So that means he's playing the small forward. So it allows for three to play two positions. I never truly took the Ruben Chinyelu to the NBA stuff that seriously. So that one I expected back. And once I saw the vision and Condon, the thing about Condon, he's very thin. He's kind of newer to basketball. He played Australian rules football and rugby and started playing basketball later. And you saw he's got this passing, he's got a motor, but he's not strong enough. I wasn't sold on him being a first-round pick unless the team really was wowed by his workouts. Yeah. And I think he could have been, but the vision became more and more clear. If you asked me during the national championship, I would have said I doubt it, because I think Thomas Houck would have left.
Yeah.
But when he came back, I would say that the odds raised significantly.
So, I think our expectation is that Xavion Lee and Boogie Fland will start in the backcourt. Are you thinking right now that three of these four guys will be the starting 3 through 5?
Yeah, I would imagine it's Lee, Fland, Houck, Condon, Chinyelu.
That's dirty, man. Okay. Here's then the next question, and let's broaden it out to Houston as well, who brings in the nation's #1 recruiting class. Here's how I'll ask it to you. Of these two teams that were in the national championship game last year, which one do you think is more likely to get back there this year?
See, I thought about that the other day because I'm a nerd and I like this type of stuff.
But I know, that's why I'm asking you.
I would lean towards Houston.
Okay.
Because Houston's defense gives them a very, very high floor.
Yes.
So it's like you pencil them into the Sweet 16. And, hopefully I don't jinx them, but you pencil them into the Sweet 16, and then you got 3 more games to get to the title game. And I kind of believe that Houston's going to have growing pain because they don't have Jawan Roberts to be the answer in the post. They don't have all these answers. But what they do have is they have their backcourt back. And Walter Clayton answered a lot of questions for Florida. I have some skepticism about either Xavier Lee or Boogie Fland's ability to play point guard and the other's ability to play off the ball. So I've got a lot of questions there. Houston's bringing in a great recruiting class, but it's not Kelvin Sampson-like to rely heavily on freshmen. Like, the only freshman that's truly played a ton of minutes for Houston was Jarris Walker, and he was a totally different build and type of player. Like, he was a role player that was starring in a role early on, but they already had Marcus Sasser to carry the reins. But the reason I go Houston is I think Chris Sinak, the center, is fantastic. He's one of the best recruits in the country. He's not talked about in that top 3, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 4, top 5 draft pick in the NBA after year 1. And he's that athletic. So that's defense, that's rebounding, and that's what you're accustomed to with Houston. And then, of course, you've got yourself the backcourt that we just talked about. You got Sharp. You've got yourself Uzan. And how are they going to replicate some of the score that they lose? I'm not so sure, but that I think is easier to replicate for Houston because they started shooting better. The defense is just so hard to penetrate. I'd go with Houston. That said, I love Todd Golden. I've loved him since the San Francisco days. I think he'll be good, but I am a little skeptical of this backcourt.
Yeah, and for Houston, you also bring in Isaiah Harwell, who prior to injury was like like one of the, if not the best guard for a lot of people in this class. And so, we'll see how he can factor into that backcourt role for Houston as well. All right. Houston and Florida should be right back where they were. Obviously making it back to the national championship game is a difficult thing with lots of luck included. But I think we both think that both teams will compete again at the top of the sport. Going to be really interesting to see. Now, Houston, Florida, not the only teams to get big news. Yaxel Lendeborg is transferring from UAB to Michigan, has pulled out of the draft. And oh boy, this is big news for Dusty May. How big is the news? I'm going to ask Leaf about what he thinks about Lendeborg's decision to pull out and Michigan's ceiling and what it means for them. All coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, the NBA playoffs are in full swing. We're coming down to it with both conference finals. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. Good grief. That triple-double from Hallie Leaf. Crazy stuff on Tuesday. Well, gang, FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. If you miss getting some bets in or anything before the game gets going, no worries. You can do it in real time. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans just like you have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Tonight is Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. OKC up 3-1, looking to close it out. Thunder favored by 8.5 in this one. Tomorrow, Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Pacers up 3-1, looking to close that one out in 5 games as well. But Knicks are favored -5 in that one. Are you new to FanDuel? Well, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head on over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. So go ahead, make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Leaf, in truth, there really haven't been many draft decisions that were surprising to me in terms of players coming back. There's been a few that stayed in that I was like, okay. But in terms of players that have come back, it's mostly been guys I was like, yeah, that was the right decision. For me, Yaxel Lendeborg was one of the first ones that he did the opposite of what I thought he was going to do. So my question is, what were your thoughts about Yaxel Lendeborg's decision, and was it in line with what you thought he was going to do?
I would say once he stated at the beginning of the combine before they played the scrimmages that he was leaning 60-40 towards college despite testing pretty well, and then he ended up playing the combine and playing decently in those scrimmages. I still believed he was coming back because $3 million is a sum of money that is hard to pass up as a guarantee.
That's true.
And there's also, like, it's a risk, but it's also you're more prominently displayed playing at Michigan. You saw what Danny Wolf did, who I think is a worse athlete than Yaxel. I know there's many people in the Danny Wolf hive that talk about how fleet of foot he is with the ball and all these things. But Yaxel is a better athlete in terms of the stereotypical, like, run, jump, that type of stuff. And he's going to be prominently showcasing an offense that works for a big guy. Like, we just saw that with Danny Wolf. So it didn't stun me, especially after he said that. I had him around 25 on my big board. So if you're picked in the 20s, you end up making a good amount of money. You get a guarantee, and therefore you should get a rookie contract that's enough money to, combat the $3 million offer. But why not have the opportunity to do both? You get $3 million at Michigan, then you bet on yourself to do so again. So I'm not sure what I would have advised him if I were like his agent, but I do kind of think that once he stated that and tipped the cap, I doubt it was going to change. Like, if he felt that he could say that, then I felt like there was not much that was going to change his mind, even though he said 60-40. Yeah. I think most people say, like, my goal is to stay in the draft, and then they privately evaluate. Like, to me, for some reason, that stood out. I do know a guy, or at least I'm good friends with a guy that played basketball with someone who played against Yaxel and was singing his praises. He was talking about how good Yaxel is, and if you get the ball in his hands with better athletes and better spacing, that he could be really, really good, and he's the real deal. So I was curious to see if some teams would see that and say, hey, you know what, we're going to give you a top 20 guarantee and see if that changes him. But my gut was that he'd come back.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, he can look at what Danny Wolf did this year and that complete glow up and say, I'm a better athlete. Why can't this be me as well? I like your reasoning there about, hey, yes, even though you could get a guarantee that is probably commensurate with the amount of money he'll make at Michigan this year, why not double dip? Go to Michigan, get all of that, and then go get that rookie contract and kind of double up. I think the only hesitation or pushback I would have with that is, but what if it doesn't work at Michigan? What if we don't expect him to, but what if he somehow gets exposed this year and goes plummeting in draft stock, right? But end of the day, I like dudes betting on themselves, right? I think it's a good thing, and it shows me his competitive nature and is like, yeah, like, let's go play. And here's the truth of the matter too. We love it as college basketball people. It's great for us because we get some of the great talent back. And so I'm excited about it just as somebody who loves college basketball. I'm like, yeah, come on, dude, let's go. So obviously this is a college basketball show though, and we want to talk about what this means for Dusty May's team. Leaf, I got to admit, I've been a bit lower than some others on Michigan. And I think part of that was that I thought Yax might stay in the draft. With him back, what does it do to you in terms of thinking about Michigan's capability this upcoming season?
Yeah, him coming back is obviously it's vital. It's integral to what they're going to do. I expect him to be operating in a similar situation as Danny Wolf, and that's a team that made the Sweet 16. I was not particularly fond of the way that they play. They played a ton of close games. Their guard play was less than spectacular. They came up with big shots when they needed them, and I thought they probably should have beaten a lot of these teams by more than they beat them. So that's the team that I'm never going to love. But in year one, with Dusty May, you made the Sweet 16. That's a very, very good showing. I'm with you. I kind of don't love the roster construction once again.
Yeah.
But I do at least see the vision of, look, it worked once. We're going to go big. We're going to rebound the ball. I think Yaxel's even more versatile. I think he's a better defender if he wants to be. I'm curious to see how much that'll be there, considering the role he'll play offensively. But he had a game where he scored 30, 20, and 8. Like, this is a guy in college basketball that really can do it all. It's going to be hard to argue with, but I do think that they're not the favorite in the Big Ten. Like, Purdue's probably the favorite in the Big Ten, and I think Illinois' got a really talented roster as well. But I think you're looking at a similar level team, maybe a little more certainty of what you're getting from the start, because Danny Wolf laid out a foundation for what to expect, whereas I think they took some time to find the Danny Wolf-Lad Golden combo.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I'm with you too. I'm not sold, I think, on the backcourt, as you said, because you've got Roddy Gale still, you've got Namari Burnett still, and
those are good wings. But it's just they didn't feel like they were used well.
Yes, and you've got Elliot Cadeau coming in to be your point guard, whom I've watched a lot of, and Leaf, the capability is massive for Elliot Cadeau, but the inconsistency throughout his 2 years at North Carolina in terms of shooting and turnovers and honestly emotional health on the court has left a lot to be desired. So similar to last year with Michigan's backcourt, I think I still have questions. And with Cadeau in particular, it's like, until he shows us and proves that he can do it night in and night out and minute to minute within a game, I think you have to continue to question the consistency that you're going to get there. And I don't want to do that, but all I can do is what we've seen on the floor to this point in his career. And so, I think John Rothstein, for example, with his latest update, has Michigan up to like 5 after the Lendeborg news. Would you say, like, if I gave you Michigan top 5, top 10, top 25, what would be the ideal spot in your mind?
It's hard to rank them out without knowing everyone's rosters yet. Sure. But
I will. I'm just saying, based on them, what kind of roster does it feel like? A top 5, a top 10, top 25?
I'll go top 15, 17, somewhere in there. Okay. I think my concern is really that Roddy Gale and Damari Burnett are very good role players, but I feel like they should be able to do more. And the way that Michigan played last year limited their ability. And Elliot Cadeau can't shoot. And if you play 2 bigs once again, that limits his ability to have an offensive efficiency, and effectiveness. So then do you see more of the two wings who are decent shooters? They're not spectacular, but they have the capacity to do more than they did, and they bought in, which is really important. But now you've got a guy who's going to have the ball in his hands a ton in Yaxel. So is Elliot Cadeau going to be on the floor? Because he can't shoot if he's not on the ball. And he can't shoot in general at a high clip. So then you have him, and then you got another big that's also blocking the paint. So they really need the shooting to take a leap. I think Yaxel's going to be fantastic. I think he'll be an all Big Ten guy. But, yeah, I think that's a top 15, top 17 team, the way it's constructed. If they start playing really well out the shoot, like sometimes you can just tell pretty quickly, like, oh, that team's legit.
Yeah,
I'm curious if they'll be one of them. But I at this point, I'm a little skeptical, and I think top 5's definitely too rich for me. I'd say top 10 slightly too rich for me.
Last question. Lendeborg's decision to come to Michigan, who does that send to the bench? Is it Mara or is it Merez Johnson?
That's tough because
I've struggled with this one a lot, man.
In theory, you'd like to replicate what they did with Mara and play him because then you have tremendous length. But I think Merez Johnson and his toughness is very valuable in a Big Ten season that'll be filled with good bigs. So my guess is that Mara will get this first shot at starting.
I think that's what I would say as well. But similar to Florida, it's nice that you've got kind of this three-headed front court. I mean, that's one less than Florida, obviously, but it's nice to have that capacity within a game to rotate between those guys. Going to be really interesting to see on Michigan and both nationally and within the Big Ten, right? A lot of interesting stuff there. So we will keep our eyes on that. Now, Andy, I just called you Andy. Leaf, we're going to get Houston and Auburn again this year. And here's the good news, Leaf. Thankfully, this time around, Auburn is not going to be getting on a plane to fly to Houston, so we will not get a plane fight. Oh, well.
No horseplay?
No horseplay this time around. That's a bummer. We're going to talk about that game and BYU going all in on scheduling big coming up in just a second. Isaac Shade, Leaf Tulane with you, despite the fact that I just called him Andy. That's kind of hilarious. We haven't done the three of us together on a show in a while. We should do that sometime this summer. It'd be fun. Okay, guys, on Tuesday, we got big 2 games mentioned. Houston, Auburn, we're going to get, again, UConn and BYU. Let's start, Leaf, with Houston and Auburn. Battleground 2K doubleheader. Jeff Goodman was the first one that I saw with this on November 16th. The second game of the doubleheader is TBD. This one will be in Birmingham at Legacy Arena. As a reminder, folks, last year, Auburn won at Houston despite the distraction of that flight where there was some horseplay, as Leaf said, on the plane. And also, as a reminder, that was Tahad Pettiford's coming out party. So, Leaf, what are you expectant with round 2 of this thing? Because I got to be honest, I loved Auburn last year. I don't see it as much this year. I think Houston might return the favor of winning on the road.
That's what I'm anticipating as well. Obviously, going on the road makes an added difficulty level. But I talked about this on Locked On NBA Big Board yesterday in terms of Tahad Pettiford's decision. Say Tahad Pettiford comes back. Even then, I think you may have an all-SEC guard, but you just don't have the supporting cast. Last year, they had 2 of everything. They had 2 shooters, Chad Baker-Mazara, Miles Kelly. You had a point guard that could just kind of operate and do his thing. And then you had the dynamic guard in Todd Pettiford, who was the 6th man. Then you had 2 bigs. This year, I just don't see the vision with the roster as much. I think you add a scorer in Hall from UCF. You have a very good coach in Bruce Pearl, who I do have a ton of faith in. But this type of roster construction screams to me like 6th seed. A 6th seed of probably the SEC and the NCAA tournament. That's not a bad team by any means, but it's not a team that inspires a ton of faith for me for Tahad to lead to the promised land. I do think Tahad should come back and just star, and you can bet on yourself like you talked about, and that's a discussion for another time. But I mean, that's a team that's going to have to find a way to manufacture a lot of points against what will be a vaunted defense in Houston, and there's going to be a lot of role definition questions. Whereas this past year, one of the things that Auburn did so well early in the season, before I think everyone always acts like Auburn flamed out. No, they stayed good the whole year. They made the Final Four very good. It's just that their initial level was closer to their final level than was Florida's, than was Duke's. Like Auburn was fantastic. So if the Final Four was played in December, Auburn was winning that easily.
Yeah.
And I think that they plateaued. This year, I just don't know how they're going to score enough points. In Houston, I think will be closer to their final level than Auburn.
Yeah, and and it's tough too because with Pettiford, he had showed up in so many big moments throughout the year and just didn't do enough of that in that Florida game in the national semifinal to do it. And so I guess we should also timestamp this and say it is 12:30 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, and as of right now, we don't yet have a decision from Tahad Pettiford, one expected at some point today. Again, Andy will have that on tomorrow's show. Leaf, the other big game here is the fact that BYU is like, hey, look, we got AJ DeBansa, we got a bunch of other dudes back, so we're going all in on scheduling. Just announced, not officially, but through some good reporting from, I want to remember his name, I think it was Ryan McCombs was his name, that BYU is going to host North Carolina for an exhibition game this year. And then the big news yesterday is that John Rothstein reported that UConn is going to play BYU in TD Garden in Boston, most likely November 14th or 15th. Leaf, I love this because AJ DeBansa from Brockton, Mass. How cool is it to A, get this massive matchup, and B, for it to be something of a homecoming game for DeBansa?
Well, I think it's fantastic. And they're also, like, he did an interview on First Take and he said, well, why can't I play in these games at BYU? When Stephen A was asking him, why not go to Duke or Carolina? Well, the Duke and Carolina aspect of it, I'm going to go to that game that they're playing North Carolina in October. That's at the Delta Center. That's in Utah. I'm going to go to that game and watch the scrimmage of two, like you'd say, a premier program in North Carolina, but a team that I expect to be better than North Carolina and BYU.
BYU, that's right.
And so that's huge. And then you go to UConn, like that's a team that's won 2 of the last 3 national champions. And so I'm very eager to see what BYU is able to do, how quickly they coalesce as a roster, what's the pecking order, because they come back with a first team all Big 12 guy in Richie Saunders who fits every system in America because he can play a role, but he can also be the star. And then you have a guy who you would assume the ball is in his hands a lot in AJ, but he's a freshman. He's different. Then you have Rob Wright, who isn't a particularly good shooter, but he gets downhill and scores. So I'm very curious to see how quickly they coalesce. I wonder if they struggle out of the gates, but they have so much talent. And I really buy into the system that Kevin Young started implementing and then playing at the NBA pace and space. So I'm very, very eager to watch BYU this season. I will be in attendance for that North Carolina scrimmage, and I'll be certainly watching a lot of these games regardless.
Leap, with this game expected to be November 14th or 15th, that is the second week of the season. What is it? That's a Friday or Saturday at the end of the second week. With that being so early in the season, who do you think that then favors, UConn or BYU?
I'd go UConn. I think so UConn's got fewer moving pieces.
I think you got to be right there. And with the travel of it all, right? Like if this game was like, hey, UConn, you got to come to the elevation in Utah, I think that's a different conversation of it as well. And you always, like, I love the homecoming game, but you always wonder, like, are guys going to press in those moments, right? Like, is the exhilaration so much that you expend so much so quickly? And we don't know, right? We haven't yet seen AJ step on the floor and play a single minute of college basketball. But that'll be an interesting dynamic. But love seeing this happen. Coach Shire did that for Cooper Flagg last year, got him back close to Maine for a home game. And historically, we've seen some others do this. So, I love this move by Kevin Young and the staff getting this game, win, lose, or draw. Like it's a really cool thing. And another massive game early in the season. And this is good to get eyeballs on college basketball out of the gate. Leaf, any other thoughts on this game?
I mean, it'll be awesome. I'm very curious to see how quickly UConn can implement what they felt like they lacked last year. Like you look at what they had, and they just didn't have the guard play that could orchestrate and conduct great looks the way that they had. Obviously, they lost 2 top 7 picks in Stefan Castle, Donovan Clingan. Caravan's back this year for another year. There's going to be more people that can help him. He was asked to fill a role that isn't one that I think innately fits what he does well. Right. And so now he's back into a role that fits him more conducively. You bring in Silas Demery, and I think he could emulate. I'm not saying he will be Tristan Newton, but I think if you look at their profiles coming out of the portal towards UConn, they are similar to one another, big guards that can shoot well from 3, rebound the basketball. So I am high on UConn coming into the season, but I'm also extremely curious to see who fills those roles and what the pecking order is for UConn, because obviously they had an egalitarian approach, but in their championship years, there was a defined pecking order. Like, it doesn't mean egalitarian would indicate like there are a lot of people with equal opportunity. It is, but there's still a guy that they need. Last year it was, like Liam McNeely, we thought you're going to be the third or fourth best player, and all of a sudden you have to be the best and have 38 and 10 for us to eke out a win in Omaha. And that was a 9 seed Creighton. No disrespect to Creighton, but like UConn had top 5 rankings early in the season, and I was low on them, and I faced some criticism on Twitter. And I was like, man, I just don't know who's going to do what on this team. This year, I think I know what's going to happen. I'm just curious to see how adeptly they feel it. Like, is Solo Ball an all Big East guy this year?
He has to be for them to do well.
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll be pretty good this year, though.
Yep. Terrace Reed back in the front court. Jalen Stewart. I think you're right. Fewer moving pieces at UConn make them the favorite in this game. But it's funny, of the 2 games we've talked about, because of Auburn and Houston both being 1 seeds last year, UConn being a bit down and BYU not being there yet, you would think the Houston-Auburn game is the highlight. But I think this BYU-UConn game is the one that'll be a preseason top 10 matchup. Whereas, like, yes, Houston will be preseason top 10. I don't think Auburn is. I think Auburn will be ranked preseason. But I think it is BYU-UConn that is the higher profile game, and that makes it very interesting. All right, Leaf. We'll stay tuned to see what other draft decisions come out throughout the day. Wednesday again, Andy Patton, not the guy here sitting next to me, will be the one tomorrow to unpack all the rest of that for you, including Texas A&M's news with Mbako and Pop Isaacs going to be there for Buckyball in year 1 in College Station. Man, that's going to be really interesting. If you have not subscribed to the show on both video and audio, make sure you do that right now so you don't miss a second of the show. If you haven't joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, we'd love to see you in there. A great place to chat college hoops with all of your favorite people. That's free to join, and the link is in the show notes. As always, apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Pope. Shouts to our guy, Mick Bruin. And until tomorrow, peace.